Hey gang, we're doing 6.4 here, the size and distribution of cities. So within the standard, we are going to be talking about any principles that help explain how cities are distributed and the size of them. So if you want to pause the video here to set up your notes, there's going to be kind of two parts of the standard. The first is here where you see primate city, rank, size rule, and gravity model. You'll need a space for definition, examples, and impact. And then for the second part of the standard, you will need a place for a definition and again, examples. Okay, so go ahead and pause if you need to. Otherwise, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So in the standard, again, we're talking about size and distribution of city. And let me blow this up for you really quick. In that first part of your notes, you are gonna need to know these key concepts and their definitions. So again, you can pause the video if you need to, but a primate city is going to be a lead city in a country that has a huge influence of not only size, but just its resources. And then rank size rule is just a quick little formula we'll do that shows the statistical relationship between the largest city in a country and the next largest city. And it's all based on population. Then the gravity model is just like it sounds. It's kind of a model that predicts the degree of interaction and probability of how people move between two places. Okay. So again, if you need to pause to get those definitions in, go ahead and do so. All right, so this is rank size rule. And the idea here is that if this number 1 was representing our largest city based on population in a country, then these circles are going to indicate that how the population would be in that second largest city is going to be half of the population of this first largest city. And I'll show you some examples in a minute. And then it just moves on. So then if the third most populated city is going to be 1/3 of the population of the largest city and so forth. Okay, so that's size rank rule. We'll come back to it in just a second. Okay, so for primate cities, here's some great examples. So Dhaka is the primate city for Bangladesh. And what I want you to take away here, and this is the impact that we'll talk about in a minute, is Dhaka's population, right? You see that. And then the next city is Chittagong. It's like not even close to the same population. Okay, when you see a country with a city that just has an overwhelming amount of population and no other cities in that country come close to it, then it's going to be a primate city, okay? Another example is going to be Seoul in South Korea. Wow, okay, so look at the population of Seoul and then look at the second most populated city in the country of South Korea. Again, doesn't even come close, okay? So the impact that you have with a primate city is obviously a city this large is going to have a huge impact on everything like, economics, social aspects, political aspects. But the problem is all the sources are going to be in that primate city. And the downfall of that is that all the sources are going to be in that primate city and therefore not spread throughout the country. So for example, if Seoul, South Korea is doing really bad, that city is not doing well, then that means the whole country is probably not going to be doing well either. Okay. Now let's look at a place like Canada, and their largest city is going to be Toronto in Ontario. And we see that the second most populated city is Montreal. Look how close those population numbers are. And so with this, you don't have a primate city in Canada. And the impact that that's going to have is that your resources in Canada are going to be more spread out among these large cities. Okay, so for example, Montreal is on the other side of Canada from Toronto with a port, okay? And they're a very strong economic city. If you start to look at some of these other cities, like ranked number 3 is Vancouver and 4th is Calgary, guys, you got to remember that they've hosted the Olympic Games. And so again, there are very prominent cities in Canada, okay? And that's going to be, again, resources are going to be more evenly distributed throughout those cities. Okay, same thing in Germany. You can also use the size rank rule here, and you see that Berlin, although it's very well known for having a lot of political power, you're also going to have Hamburg, Germany, that has a lot of economic power. Okay. And so again, you see when these cities have close numbers in population, again, those resources are going to be spread out. Okay, let's talk quickly about the gravity model. And so remember, this is kind of a little bit about migration and where you have what pull factors are going to take people to, and you can make predictions of what's going to pull people to where. And so it's really based on not just size of cities, but distance of cities. So for example, if this Washington, D.C., right, this is going to have a major gravity pull factor of politics. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of jobs there, seeing how that is going to be our capital for our politics. And then the gravity model for tourism, like think of like Orlando, where Disney World is located. Okay, so that is going to be another pull factor that is more social. And then you have obviously religious or cultural gravity pulls. And this is a picture of the Vatican City in Rome. And this is a picture of Mecca, which is the pilgrimage that Muslims take every year. And so what I just said in class is the gravity model, because of time-space compression and our access to resources, like a celebrity like Beyonce can easily jump on her private jet and fly from LA to New York. And even though the LA and New York are very far apart, they're very large. So it's not uncommon for, say, very powerful, rich, or people or celebrities to travel or even have homes in those places. Okay, so another example I used in class was in Colorado. We see a lot of people move here from California and Texas. And again, Colorado is kind of the center of those two places. And so that's going to be based mostly on distance rather than size. Hey guys, this is the second part of Standard 6.4. And we're going to continue talking about principles that explain the size and distribution of cities. So we first need to know the definition of central place theory. You can go ahead and write that in your notes. It's going to explain the distribution of goods and services across a region. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about some examples, and you may even want to draw a visual of this as we get into it. But if you look over to the side, you can see that I have patterns of hexagons. And the reason that we're going to use hexagons in central place theory is because they are really easy to make connections and show range, versus if we were to use circles, that they would overlap and get really messy. You'll see what I'm talking about in just a minute. So before we move on with central place theory, it's important that you understand what range and threshold is. So go ahead and write the definition of those in your notes as well. So threshold is size of population that's necessary for a service to exist and be profitable. So for example, if you think of a big mall in Denver, like the Cherry Creek Mall, if you were to put that in the middle of Fountain, it is not going to do well because, quite frankly, Fountain doesn't have the population to support a mall like that and be profitable. Okay, so that's threshold. Range is going to be the distance people are willing to travel for a service or good. So guys, I'm not going to drive to Denver to go get a tube of toothpaste, okay? However, I might drive to Denver to go get a couch for my house, or maybe a special outfit or pair of shoes. Okay, so that is range. All right, let's go back to central place theory, and I have set up just a little kind of legend here to help you along when we're looking at this a little closer. So the bigger circle is going to represent a city, and then the smaller blue circle may be a town, and even smaller than a town will be like a village or hamlet. That's going to be the lower order place, okay? Now, if we look at this on a map of Colorado, you can see Denver is going to be my biggest circle, and then Colorado Springs is going to represent kind of a city, and then this yellow circle is going to represent, say, Fountain as a town, okay? And if we put these in a pattern without our map in the background, we can start to see a hexagon pattern. So thinking about range and threshold, oftentimes you guys have probably had, or your family has driven to Colorado Springs for supplies or even experience there, okay? And many of you have maybe even gone to Denver. So what we start to see is when you have patterns in these smaller towns going into a city like Colorado Springs, you will see that hexagon pattern. And when we overlay this in a map, we will see hexagons develop over the entire map. And this does a really good job of showing us range. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about goods and services with a high range. So a place like Denver, if you had to have a special surgery that could even be life-threatening, of course you're going to drive to Denver, right? You might even drive further. Okay. What about, say, your prom? Would you drive to Denver to look for an outfit for prom? Okay, of course. And those are going to be goods and services with a high range. Okay, you're willing to go a lot further for something that's pretty important. Now let's look at high threshold. So this is a baseball stadium. Obviously, you couldn't fill this in a place like Fountain or even Colorado Springs. But in a place like Denver, where you have a Major League Baseball team and lots of fans, you're going to be able to probably fill that stadium, right? And so you have to be smart about where you put a complex like this because it's very expensive. Do you have the kind of population that's going to fill that stadium? Okay, so that's threshold. Now let's talk about goods and services with low range and low threshold. So here, a typical convenience store. And back to my toothpaste, okay? I can get toothpaste probably in a very, very low range area, 5 minutes or less from my house or even work, right? And it's a low threshold. So things there are going like toothpaste or say gas for my car. These are all low threshold goods, okay, with a low range. Now let's do a little bit of practicing here. So here you have a picture that's representing, say, fine dining, okay? Is that going to have a low or high threshold, right? If you are going to pay a lot of money for this experience and wonderful food, are you going to be willing to drive further? Maybe even to Denver, okay? But if you have this image is representing fast food, probably not going to drive all the way to Denver for fast food because we have a very low threshold of products here that you can get probably anywhere within 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, let's look at something else. So this image is representing like a box store like Walmart or say Target. And then this is going to be a huge mall. Okay, what about the box store? Is that going to be high or low threshold? So yeah, we need a few people to be able to support that to be profitable, but nothing like a mall, right? And a very huge mall with many, many stores in it. You're going to have a pretty big population. And also some of those products in the mall are going to be specialty products. So you want people from all over to come and purchase those products. So hopefully that helps with your understanding of range threshold in the central place theory. And that concludes 6.4. Yay!